Hello, hello, NJ and NJR. I am Shannon Muller, and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm really happy to have Tim Pappas of Black Swan Racing with us. Before we get started, I want to welcome any new members that we may have on the call. Hopefully, some of you were able to attend the drive-in event last week down at Patriots Park. Want to thank John Vogt for all the hard work that he put into that. It was an awesome evening. And I also wanted to give a quick little shout out to Sue Smith. Her and I were able to catch up at the drive-in. And I know the last few months have been really difficult. And as we go into winter, I want to make sure that we remember all our friends who are kind of struggling in the winter, reach out and keep that connection, which is what makes NNJR so special. So I don't want to waste a lot of time. Dyke's got a packed agenda, so I'm going to turn it over to Dyke. One last disclaimer. If anyone misses this presentation, it will be available on our YouTube channel, our closed Facebook group, and our website. If anyone has any questions, let me know. But here you go, Dyke. Have a great night.
Thank you, Shannon. Thank you, Matt, for getting all this to work. And NJR, welcome to the Rebel Broadcasting Studios, live from New Jersey. We do have a packed night tonight. This is going to be excellent. If you want to know what it's like to be a professional car racer or car owner, or what it's like to compete in a 24-hour race, or rebuild to original specs, a 935, a 904, a 914.6, or hot rod, a 959. We're gonna cover it all. So kick back and listen to an old friend of ours, Tim Pappas, talk about Porsche, Black Swan Racing, and his quest to restore and preserve historic Porsches. I'd like to welcome a special guest, Mike Dano. Mike has been a long-time friend of Tim. Mike has helped Tim spend lots of money over the years. I figured this was the least we could do. Maybe Tim can get some payback. I'm going to pass it over to Mike, and then we'll pick up in a bit.
Tim, thanks. Welcome. It's good to see you.
Nice to see you too.
So we were, Dyke and I were talking earlier about how long it's been since we first started coming around. And I believe, what did we say, Dyke? It's almost 30 years now, right? Something
Crazy.
like
Almost 30 years.
Yeah.
I was in grammar school.
Right.
Yeah.
Um,
Skinny kid shows up in a white turbo. Remember that?
Yeah. I think you were a senior in high school at that time, if I remember correctly.
No, I was in college. Come on.
Barely.
Yeah, barely.
So yeah, we started off doing DEs together, and I guess Bridgehampton is probably one of the most memorable tracks that we've been to over the years. You want to give us any feedback on your experiences from doing your original Bridgehampton events?
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for inviting me, and it's really cool to be here and be talking to NNJR. When I first started in the club, which was back in '92, I did do a tremendous number of NNJR days. Really anywhere, any club that was going out to Bridgehampton, and NNJR had a bunch of Bridgehampton days, I would try and get signed up and go to those events. And met Mike actually, in a roundabout way. My car wasn't working well, and one of the aftermarket guys recommended that I call PowerTech to get it fixed. And then we started doing the DE days, Lime Rock, Watkins Glen, Bridgehampton, whatever. We covered some pretty good territory, but those were sort of the three that I did the most. And it's approaching 30 years now. After doing all those days, it kind of led me into pro racing. But I have to say, those early days running at Bridgehampton were just a lot of fun. And now when I go out to Long Island and I see that place as a golf course, and I talk to people who go there and say, oh, it's so cool, it's the greatest golf club, and they've got the straightaway and the bridge, and I get so angry because I say, you have no idea what they took away, as we got a decent but super expensive golf course in place of what was one of the best road courses in America. And that was the kind of course that was not designed necessarily by engineering. It was just, follow the hill, follow the trees, follow the path of least resistance around an area of land. And it managed to have really great flow and great feel. And I feel like all those tracks that were built in the late 50s, like Lime Rock and the Glen and Summit Point and Bridgehampton and Laguna Seca, they all have that same characteristic, which was, nobody was overthinking the passing zones. No one was thinking about downforce, and actually, consequently, no one was really thinking about safety too much either. But they still made for and continue to make for my favorite places to go race, the classic American tracks. Like, I think Road America is probably one of the only ones, or Mossport for sure. Mossport actually reminds me most of the bridge compared to any of the places that we've gone over the years. But back to the bridge and NNJR, I can remember going out there, and was one of the first events I did, and Mike, I think Mike stayed at my house, and we just ended up picking up a whole bunch of stragglers that didn't have a place to stay. So I think maybe Dyke stayed with us. I know Scott Ward did, and Keith, and just had a good crew of people. And we would go out to the bar after doing the day, and I'd have to use my fake ID because I was only 18 at the time.
I do remember that.
So yeah, it's been, going on 30 years now. So that means that I'm getting old and you guys are really fucking old.
Yeah, well, okay. On that note, I think what we're going to do is play that excellent video that you sent us about your work with Porsche.
Yeah, I can do a little setup. Of it as well. Just the quick story is a good friend of mine in Los Angeles is Australian, and he said to me, hey, you're doing all this endurance racing. You need to do the 12 hours of Bathurst. It is the craziest race, the best circuit. I had heard about Bathurst over the years and seen video and things. And I just thought, you know what, this is going to be the year 2018. We're going to race all over the world and try some different things. And so the season started with 24 hours of Daytona. And just a few days after 24 hours of Daytona, we're in Bathurst. And we were going for the first time. And Porsche kind of said to me, you're the perfect example of what we want our customers to do with factory built customer race cars that you can take off the shelf, not do any customizations, put your own livery on it, and go race anywhere in the world. And so would you guys mind if we made a video about what you're doing? And so we got together, myself and my friend David Calvert-Jones. He also went back to run. And we made this video, which is sort of supposed to be a bit of a sales pitch about what you can do as a customer of Porsche with their support and their race cars.
Terrific. Over to you, Matt. Can we tee that up?
North America presents a story about two teams. Competition Motorsport, led by David Calvert-Jones, and Black Swan Racing, led by Tim Pappas.
Tim and David live in a very small pocket of Los Angeles.
Normally we race in the United States, and we've brought the team all the way to New South Wales.
It's very funny to see ZJ here. He just is so excited to be in Bathurst, you know, his home soil. It's cool because we are right next door in the garage, and it's a good atmosphere.
His experience coming here, Competition Motorsports, has a great record here. So we just kind of drafted off them, and, you know, CJ was incredibly helpful to my team manager and their logistics.
As Australian racing here at Bathurst, it's huge. I mean, this is my home country.
Two friends from Southern California who go to Australia to compete in the 12 hours of Bathurst against some of the best drivers and manufacturers in the world.
Well, I met CJ in 2013, and straight away I realised that for an amateur guy, he drives very, very well.
He does his talking on the racetrack with lap times.
I think he proved himself last year very, very well.
Tim has developed very well over the last years. He's not very far off from a professional driver.
Tim is definitely one of the best bronze drivers.
My history with Porsche goes back to the first car that I got when I was able to get like a cool sports car and started club racing right away.
It's been driving a GT3R now for a couple of years. It's just a great car. I love it.
The technical support that Porsche gives you on the engineering side, you got to seriously look at Porsche.
For me, if the Pro-Ams beat the factory cars, that's probably the best result you can have.
They're just so incredibly involved in the teams that it makes being a customer of Porsche that much more successful.
This is something very special, and that's why it's called also the Porsche family.
Welcome to Mount Panorama. Welcome to the Liqui Moly Bathurst 12-hour. 50 cars on this enormous grid about to take on this incredible 12-hour race.
I think what CJ's done in the last 12 months, we know he's had incredible success here last February. Laguna was an incredible result for him, and these aren't easy tracks.
Bathurst, one of the most iconic racetracks in the world.
Just this iconic mountain racetrack with walls and just looks super sketchy.
Bathurst is like Monaco in the outback.
If you can get on the podium in this race, man, you've done some good racing.
The number 540 car, which is Black Swan Racing, entering with Tim Pappas behind the wheel, with still just under 9 hours to go. We've got 3/4 of this race left yet.
Huge chance the Pro-Am car is winning today's race.
In comes the leading car, the 12, to get service.
And one pit box up, Black Swan has brought in Lucas Stoltz, and they're handing the reins over to Jerome Bleekemolen. So I think it's a pretty good time to be a Porsche driver.
And it's all coming down to fuel. Matt Campbell has 2 extra laps of fuel than the 2 Porsches ahead of him. That might just be enough to allow him to drive a bit quicker. Safety car comes out now. All bets are off.
We're chewing our fingernails, and we're 2 laps better off than the 4 cars in front of us. So I'd hate to think how nervous they are on fuel at the moment. It's going to come down to the wire, it looks like.
10 or 11 laps to go around here. The countdown is on at the mountain. Campbell can win this race. Yeah. There's a safety car. That Mercedes comes in and gives it a heck of a lick. Wow. Race suspended. This is history being made here in the 12 hours. So they will pull the cars onto the grid. The issue here for the guys at the front is they haven't pitted to fill the cars up with fuel, and now they can't. Now, the question on everybody's lips is how much fuel is still in those cars.
Race control to all teams. The race has been declared.
They've not seen the checkered flag. There'll be no more racing. And this is a unique set of circumstances here at the Liqui Moly Bathurst 12 hours.
You know, to come down here and run 12 hours of Bathurst without any issues at all is just a testament to Porsche Motorsport.
I think David and Tim's relationship is a small example of what I talked about, the connection to the people all around the world. Porsche is almost a religion where, you know, church is at the racetrack and you see all of these people from different walks of life. But once you come inside the walls of a racetrack, you all speak the same language. You travel around the world together. There's this real connection where racing brings people together.
To finish second in class and 4th overall, I couldn't have done it without Competition Motorsport and the support of Porsche.
Let's get him back out in BRM Watches Pro-Am for Black Swan Racing. Tim Pappas, Jerome Bleekemolen, Lucas Stoltz and Mark Lee.
You run a Porsche and you can win.
Well, that was pretty awesome. We'll ask you, about the logistics about packing up and flying, halfway around the world to go for a race in a little bit. But that was neat. I'm going to jump to Daytona 2019, and then we're going to show some pictures of that. But you were nice enough to show me and my friends around your operation. I got to meet some professional drivers in the bus. Mike, I think you were there as well.
Yeah, that was an awesome time.
And everything was running good. You guys were flying out there. And then it started to rain and rain and rain. And I remember seeing you that morning, and the whole atmosphere had changed. And when we were in the buses, everybody was really confident. I mean, we were looking good. And you said a call came in through the radio, probably about 20 hours into the race, where the driver just said, "We've been wrecked." Going into the bus stop, the WeatherTech Ferrari smashed into the back of you. And I just remember at that point seeing all the work and how much you put into this and the dedication, and to have it all evaporate just, with like hours to go in a 24-hour race. But you had this attitude like, that's racing, got to get ready for the next race. I wonder if you could just, walk us through that whole, the ups and downs of that Daytona day.
Yeah, well, I mean, you have a race like Bathurst where we went down there on the first try and we won our class and finished third overall in a Pro-Am car against all pro cars. We were the highest finishing Porsche. We beat the factory car. Those are the good days, and that was an interesting scenario for us as well. Then you have a day like we had the next year at Daytona in 2019. I think that you'd have to ask yourself why you do this sport if you couldn't, adopt that amount of indifference to something like that, because it's just so frequently that you're standing on the precipice of a great win and then the splitter falls off the car, or the transmission packs in, or something happens and it just all goes in the blink of an eye. I've never actually let that bother me too much. When I first started racing, it was so important to get wins and get podiums. And then as I got older, I found myself trying to challenge different parts of me. It was more about my repetitive times, about my margin to the pros that I was driving against. It was more about, the perfection in my lap time and bringing back the car in one piece and, honing the craft, the race craft and the driving. And so you always find things to take away from it. In the case of the 19 race, I triple stinted at night and drove really well. And I just felt like I did everything I could to put ourselves in a position to win. And really the race control guys made a huge error not red flagging the race sooner. I mean, it was zero visibility conditions and we got absolutely smoked. The good news is that I thought the car was completely tubbed. I thought it was really going to be a mess. And we came to find out it was very minimal damage. But at the time, it was hard not to be upset. But of course, I left Daytona and once again, 2 days later, got on a plane and went to Bathurst to go down and defend my title. And that, ended up being the start of a very difficult year for me. The first accident I'd ever really had in racing. I mean, I'd been crashed many times and most of them were kind of self-inflicted and, you kind of walk away from them a little bit startled. But at Bathurst in 19 in the first practice, had a massive mechanical failure in the car and ended up in a major crash. And so, I can remember sitting in the hospital in Sydney and thinking, oh my God, we just had the worst experience at Daytona. And now I have two cars that are written off in the span of a week. And I'm sitting here with half my body smashed up. I am the biggest idiot for taking part in this sport. And, Dyke, you and I talked about sort of what happens when you grow up and you mature a little and you start thinking about the consequences and you start really measuring what you're doing in a completely different way. For me, it stopped being about championships and podiums and things like that. And it's been more the people and the experiences. I'm more proud of the fact that I have super talented drivers who are my really, really close friends that have shaped sports car racing for the past 20 years. And I've driven with them, I've driven against them, and they're some of my closest friends. That wouldn't have happened if not for racing. I mean, similarly in Porsche Club, Patrick Long in the video sort of said it the best when he said, Porsche is like a religion, and we're all, heavily involved, and you make these friendships, and it's sort of what propels forward this passion, no matter what happens. So, when Tony Vilander just completely loses all talent and, tries to go flat through the bus stop in the rain and takes your car out, you kind of get over it quickly and you remember the relationships and the people.
Yeah, well, you definitely matured more than me. I would have taken one of those WeatherTech cup holders and found a new place to insert it in that driver. But yeah, that's a great story. We have some pictures that we can walk through that are both just some great shots from Daytona, as well as the Bathurst. Some of those, it's up to you. You shared them with me. Some of them show the extent of how well the car was banged up and how well you were banged up.
Well, the reason I think that it's worth sharing is that not because I want to scare anyone and say it's so you should never go racing. I think to the contrary, what I would say is I feel lucky that I was driving a brand new, modern, factory built racing car with the latest seat, helmet, head and neck device. You can't skimp on safety because you wind up in these places at a historic track like Bathurst or a historic track like Lime Rock, and you can really get hurt there. So be prepared. And also, I guess I got lucky in the end because here I am, and I get back in a race car within 6 months, but not without a tremendous amount of rehab and recovery and thoughts from lots of close friends. Dyke and Mike sending me some nice notes, helped a lot. So yeah, I think it's okay to share and for people to see.
You were very optimistic through that entire recovery, I gotta say.
I absolutely agree. Yeah, when some of the people see some of these X-rays in the car, they'll have.
Well, kind of what's funny is I went through text messages maybe like 4 or 5 months later, and I have all these text messages that are from 12 hours, 6 hours, 5 hours after the crash, where people are texting me saying, "Oh my God, I just heard. I'm so sorry. What's going on?" And I'm responding back, "Oh, it's nothing. I just broke my arm or something." But they're saying I'm going to be fine. I was just so out of it. I had no idea what really happened at all for quite a while. So maybe that was a good thing.
All right. So let's do this. Matt, I'm going to take over the screen. I'm going to go through some of the racing shots. Shannon, you were waving at me? Okay. And Tim, if you can just say click on or move forward. The
Sure.
first ones at
Yeah, yeah.
Daytona are good. Then we go to the Bathurst, and then we'll switch back to you, Tim, and get some comments. And then we're going to switch to really something that I find fascinating, and that's what you're doing now with restoring cars and preserving the history of Porsches, and it's fabulous. And we've got some great pictures that we'll spend probably a half an hour to 40 minutes talking about. I mean, we could talk about them forever, but that's really cool. So stay with me. I'm going to grab this screen. All right. So remember this one? Pretty packed.
Yeah, that's you know, that's from the race in 2016.
Yeah.
And that's the year actually we finished second. And funny about this picture is the car there that's in front of us, the Audi, is the car that we lost to, and we lost by only 3 seconds.
Now that was a fabulous weekend. All right.
So then this is 2019 now, sporting the livery from our friends at Indigo Auto Group.
Yeah, this was a great looking car. Hey, who's that?
There you go.
That's
Daytona.
a video, but we won't play it because it just goes back and forth. But I think we'll just jump ahead. I love this shot. This is like the classic 24-hour Daytona shot.
Yeah, totally.
Where I pulled this from.
Yep.
Yeah. There you are again.
Yep. Hey, that is actually a random picture, not from Daytona, because Jim, the engineer who's there, only was with me for a couple races. So that's actually at Spa.
Okay. I like that shot a lot. All right. Let's go to Bathurst. This was the year before, right?
That's 18. Well, it's hard to say actually because the car looked the same, but I'm guessing that that's the year before.
Yeah, it's a great shot.
So that's the let's call it the calm before the storm. One of the big differences between 2018 when we won it and 2019, the year that wasn't, is they changed the rules. So instead of being 4 drivers, we were 3 drivers. That is a bit of a misplace. I didn't realize that, but that's us at Daytona in 19. That's Matteo Caroli and Dirk Werner, 2 factory drivers, and then Marco Seefried, who's another fantastic Porsche driver, though not a factory guy.
Yeah, that was screw up.
So that, you know, again, calm before the storm. That was the day before action started at Bathurst. That's Mark Lieb, my great friend, who's Le Mans overall winner in the 919 hybrid and WEC champion, and then also Jerome Bleekmolen, who has won his class at Le Mans in the RS Spider, and also we won a couple American Le Mans championships together. So great driving lineup for that race. My helmet, which I wore at Le Mans, and unfortunately suffered a catastrophic blow at Bathurst and saved my head, but is no longer.
Yeah, I have the before and the after.
So funny picture here, Mark Lieb, we're sitting in the garage and Mark Lieb is working on his laptop. And just to his right is a person there who's wearing a shirt with a Porsche logo and a black hat. And that is a guy named Damian Mulder who came in and introduced himself to us that day and was very pleased that we let him into the garage and spent time, because he's a huge Porsche fanatic from down under. And he ended up being the guy, the spectator sitting in the spot the next day when I crashed, when there were no marshals in that spot. And he is the one who jumped over the fence and fought the fire and helped me get out of the car.
No kidding.
Wow.
Strange connection, you know. Can't really make stories like that up. This is just prep on the car the day before. And unfortunately, during that prep, one of the mechanics routed the brakes on the front left, routed the brake line wrong. And as the wheel was going around, it severed the brake line. And so the car lost 50% of its braking. But because it's an ABS car, the pressure loss threw the ABS into like a limp mode, such that I was only getting about 20% of rear braking, and that's all. And the brake line finally failed in the brake zone at the end of Conrad Strait, so 180 miles an hour. And Conrad goes from 180 mile an hour, 6-speed, fastest place we ever go, to a second gear left-hand corner. And there's straight ahead, basically a concrete retaining wall, because the earth goes up towards the hotel. So that's me when I got off, basically pitched the car sideways to throw as much weight as I could, and also to hit backwards, which fortunately I did. That's the aftermath. Those are the guys there, the spectators who put the fire out.
Oh, that's a small one. There's a big one.
That's the car backed in and quite a bit shorter.
And it was up.
That's the inside of my helmet. Can't really see from the picture, but the styrofoam inside basically got this huge depression and crack from where the back of my skull just impacted it so hard. And it was enough force that my head crushed the styrofoam inside and actually broke the carbon shell of the exterior of the helmet. And that's a, 8860 2014, all carbon $4,500 helmet that's basically like, F1 quality helmet. So was an estimated impact at somewhere between 65 and 85 G's. You can see the strap on my Simpson hybrid. I wear the hybrid instead of the Hans for a number of reasons, but you can see where the tether comes around the yoke and actually has cracked the carbon.
Wow.
And that's my right arm, which is a fully separated and telescoped fracture, because, as I pitched the car to spin it backwards, I was able to tuck my left arm in before impact, but my right arm was still out. And the force was so strong, my arm kind of flopped out sideways and just snapped around the seat. And that's what they did afterwards to fix it. So now I have bionic parts. And at the same time, when the car smashed backwards, the car got a lot shorter, and my legs basically on both sides smashed through my pelvis. And the left side was much worse than the right side because of the dead pedal. My leg was much closer. And that one required pins and screws and stuff. And the right side was fractured, but didn't require surgical enhancement. But it did put me in a wheelchair for 3 months. And I had to wear that around the hospital. That was my badge of honor.
One thing I got to point out is you got this surgery done in the United States, not there in Australia, right?
Yeah, it's an interesting point. Porsche and Audi bring doctors to all these flyaway races. That's another thing that's pretty cool about having a relationship, being a customer of Porsche or Audi. So the Porsche doctor was German, and the Audi doctor was actually a doctor from Denver, an ER doctor from Denver. And Alex, basically the head of Audi Motorsport, who's a friend, Chris Reike, he said, hey, listen, we've got this American ER doctor. He was texting me, actually, do you need him in the hospital? And I said, yeah, it'd be helpful. I don't really know, what's going on, and it's hard to make decisions. And so he came to the hospital in Sydney from Bathurst, and he spoke to the hospital and then came to me and spoke to my wife and basically said, there's no way you're having surgery here. He was communicating with Terry Trammell, the famous racing orthopedic surgeon in Indianapolis, and Trammell just didn't have a guy in Australia that he trusted. So the decision was made that I would fly back to Los Angeles and have surgery there. So Alex, the doctor, stayed with me. Actually, I think the next picture, Dyke, maybe you have a picture. There's the picture of us in the airport. So yeah, so they basically just patched me up, and because Alex was a doctor, they gave him all these drugs to give me. So every 5 hours, I had to have an injection in my stomach to prevent blood clotting, and he was giving me painkillers. So my arm was still fully separated and fractured, and both sides of my pelvis were fractured. And as it turned out, we found out later that my ankle and foot were also broken, but they didn't know that at the time. And they put me in a stretcher and then into this wheelchair. And then I flew on a regular commercial flight back to Los Angeles, 15 hours. And then my wife met us at the hospital, and Alex accompanied us to the emergency room at UCLA and interviewed the doctor and went through all my films and went through all the protocol. And the next morning at 6 a.m., I had like 9 hours of surgery.
That's unbelievable. I'll tell you, a Navy SEAL has nothing on you.
Yeah, that's my favorite picture. Is that was a picture I took when we were on our way to the track, and we stopped, and I just thought, well, what a funny picture that is. And I didn't understand the irony of seeing it myself.
That's okay. That's going to be like the most dramatic part of now we're going to look at velocity stacks and cars and stuff like that. But that's pretty intense. That's very intense. And thanks. And I think it's right. I noticed when you were in the elevator, you were still had your phone and you were texting. I remember Mike and I saying, I think he's really banged up, and Mike saying, I don't know, he's texting.
The times, nothing is going to stop me from text or Instagram. No, I think it's, for me, what transpired afterwards is that, a lot of therapy and so forth. And I think it's just a natural progression for me anyway, that I was getting to an age and a point in my life with my children and so forth, that racing, in 18, I raced all over the world, and I did Le Mans for the first time, and we did 12 hours of Bathurst, and we did 24 hours of Spa, 24 hours of Daytona, 10 hours of Suzuka in Japan. We kind of went everywhere and did everything and checked a lot of boxes. And in 19, I was intending on doing a very similar program when the accident happened. And having that time off to reflect really caused me to think about priorities and when to, make a transition to something else. And I think it also has to do with coming back and seeing my children and realizing that they were old enough to have had a lot of fear and anxiety about, that I was away and that I got hurt and I was far away and what was going to happen and what did that all mean, that I realized it was just selfish not to think about them. And the benchmark for success changed completely as well, because I've had a really fortunate career and I've gotten to do amazing races and meet people and win some races and some championships. And I realized that's not what's propelled me forward. I love the cars and I love the people and I love the driving part of it, but I can still get all of that without having to go all over the world and take all these risks. And maybe it's just getting old, but I decided I wanted to really pursue something a little different. And so I've been sort of thinking more about the history. And it's funny how in these years of racing, I've developed a network of friends and contacts, whether there are people like Mike who, know how to work on these cars and know a lot about them. So people who restore and fix and work and tune, people who are involved in selling. And I found myself more and more getting calls like, hey, there's this car you should know about that's not on the market. And, so I started collecting and that has, kind of grown. And now I find myself having more priorities, chasing down rare and interesting examples of Porsche's racing history and bringing them back to life. And that's been incredibly rewarding in the same way that the beginning of my racing career was rewarding, because it was all new to me. It was all completely new. So this is something I think is more, it's a bit more of an intellectual pursuit, but in the end, it is also fun to drive these cars. But I can't imagine driving a 904 on Bathurst. I think that would just slightly more insane than I'm willing to be. So I'll do some historic racing, but I'll be very selective about the cars and the places and the safety factor. And with that, I think, I shared with you, Dyke, some pictures of some of the projects that I've been involved with that I think are really interesting and continue.
That's our second half. This is very cool. This is like car geek heaven where we're going to go right now. This is very cool. All right, so I'm going to walk through some of the cars. I'm going to click. You're going to say this does this and that, and then next slide. How about that? We'll get there eventually. All right. Where do you want to start? You want a 914 R, pink RSR, a 904?
Maybe.
Which is that?
914, the Daytona car.
Yeah, that's cool.
So, this was a car that I knew about and then wasn't able to make a deal off market. And the owner decided to consign it to the Gooding auction in January of this year of 2020. And I bought the car, having not seen it in person, but on the advice of a couple people who knew it. And when I got it, I realized that it had, it's a very interesting, great history. I mean, it was bought by a Canadian guy named Jacques Duval, and he had sponsorship from Sunoco Canada. He took delivery of the car, a factory GT car, new in 71, even though it's a 1970. It was an unsold car. It was originally meant to be a works car, but was sold as a customer car. We discovered that while we were restoring it. And I just immediately upon getting it, I spoke with my good buddy and sort of sometime partner in crime, Kevin Jeanette, and down at Gunner Racing. and decided to completely restore the car. A few owners before me had put the car through a restoration, but really didn't do it with the same care or level or attention to detail that we're putting it through. And so we've taken every corner in the engine and the gearbox and the chassis and everything and just started over, but started over from the perspective of historical significance. So we have great Bill Warner photographs of when the car was first running at Daytona. That ran at Sebring. It was a pretty good finish at Sebring. It then won a couple races. It won a race at Trois Rivières where I raced, which is kind of fun. And then another one somewhere else in Canada, another 6-hour race. And beat a lot of cars. I mean, in 71, when it won its class in Daytona, it beat a 914 GT with Hurley and Peter Gregg. So that's kind of a cool deal that these three kind of unknown guys, one American and two Canadians, won their class. And I think the car finished in the top 10 or 11 overall.
Wow.
Which is funny because the car was doing 2-minute and 14-second laps around Daytona, which is like 35 seconds slower than what we do now.
Yeah, but it was probably as much work, or if not more.
There's a lot of writing on these that it's hard for me to see on my phone. But
okay, yeah, this says the front hood pin is incorrect. The VIN tag has never been removed. We'll keep it that way.
I don't know that we need to read every one. You can leave it up and people can read it if they like. I think the kind of more important and fun thing is Kevin takes the car apart and he makes all of these notes and then he posts everything on Instagram, and he's posted this entire story from start to finish about the process of restoring what we're calling 1017, which is the last 4 digits of the VIN. And he, including, taking the paint off selectively in different areas very carefully to find out what colors were underneath it. And it was doing this that we ultimately uncovered that the car had been painted signal orange, and only the factory GT cars, the cars they intended to campaign themselves, were painted signal orange. The customer cars were all painted white. Well, this one underneath the white paint had signal orange paint. And so as we restored it from bare metal, we primed it. And then after priming it, we painted it first signal orange, then white, and then the livery that it won Daytona in, so that it's completely accurate in every way. But we did do some other fun stuff. I mean, the factory hoods and all that are still there. Kevin took we took the fuel tank out, the factory GT fuel tank, and he splashed a mold off of it. And we're making basically a fuel cell just the way the factory would have done in the later cars, because they didn't have a fuel cell. This car just had a steel non-fuel cell tank. And so we have now converted it into a proper ATL fuel cell, but using the tank and painting it and doing it in such a way so that when you open up the hood, it'll look like a metal GT fuel cell, but it's actually a proper safe one. So there it is in signal orange. And of course, everyone says, I can't believe you're putting 20 pounds of paint on the car just to have it authentic. But I could not convince Kevin not to do that. He just refused to to cut the corners. It's just, for him, authenticity is everything. And he really marches to the beat of his own drum.
Yeah, there's some, it's beautiful. I'm just gonna
and you uncover and learn a lot about what went into these cars, and we had a lot of debates about what to do on the safety side. It will ultimately have a current modern Recaro racing seat with a halo around the driver's head and mounted in 6 points in the car there. You can see a picture of it. He was so against doing that. But I just said to him, we've got to do it. And he said, well, at least it's a Recaro, it's not something else. There's a picture of how they raced it. And, you know, one of the guys was quite tall. And so the driver's seat, you're sitting on the cushion, and then there's just nylon webbing. They actually cut the bottom of the shell of the seat out in order to sit the guy down as low as possible, which is just, you know, scary. But anyway, that's what they, back then they just did, you know, whatever they did to make themselves comfortable. So there's the new ATL fuel cell going into a knockoff outer shell. And there it is, just about completed before we put the engine into it, but with graphics going on. And actually on Friday of this week, it's going to run for the first time. We built the engine out in California, and was a full HSR legal and FIA legal. So it should be interesting to see how badly we get beaten by everyone else who's cheating like crazy in the series. Because again, Kevin didn't want to build a cheater motor for it.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It is absolutely beautiful.
Very rewarding to learn about how these cars were built. And if you take the time at some point, if anyone wants to, Gunner Racing on Instagram, if you go through their Instagram, they have so many pictures and videos, and it is kind of taking you through a journey. Dyke, do you want to do 959?
It's you know, I live for that. Okay, this is, yeah. Oops, that's driver error. This is fantastic.
Backstory on the 959 is I bought a 959 in Italy and imported it just in the January when it ticked over 25 years and you didn't have to do show or display. And I had the car and it had so many problems. It was such a nightmare to find parts. I sold it, and actually the market moved significantly and I did quite well with it. So I never really regretted having one. At one point, I shared that story with Bruce Canepa, and he said, well, you haven't ridden in one of my 959s. And he took me for a ride in the latest car that he had just built for himself, which is what he's calling his Gen 3 car. Now he calls it a 959 SC. But when I committed to buy it, it was just the 3rd generation hot rod. And he took me for a ride in the car, and it was only about 6 minutes into the ride where I said, okay, sign me up. He goes through and completely changes everything in the car. The engine in the 959 is by far the most incredible engine that Porsche has ever put in a street car of this era, because it's a 4-cam, 4-valve, twin plug, twin turbo. But it had a lot of funky stuff. It was sequential turbocharging. So what Bruce did was took all the best attributes and converted into, you know, standard parallel twin turbocharging, converted it to Motec engine management, did a whole bunch of stuff. But because you're starting with a water-cooled cylinder head with 4 valves and twin cams, you can make gobs of power. So that car, 2.85 liters, makes 820 horsepower and 650 pounds of torque. And when he told me that statistic, by the way, I basically called BS and I said, there's no way. And he took me for a ride. And Bruce, if anyone would ever or could ever ride with him, just don't, because he's just a maniac to drive with. So he did his best to scare the hell out of me. And he was driving his car. I mean, we pulled up to the first, after like 10 minutes of driving, we pulled up to the first traffic light we got to after this hot lap. And the brakes were smoking so badly out the side of the car. I couldn't even believe it, because he had just pushed it so hard. But you can see 959, the amount of electronics in one of these cars is unbelievable. It had self-leveling ride height. using hydraulic lifters. And what we've done is basically converted the car to the equivalent of 959S suspension. So no hydraulic lifter, but still twin shocks at all four corners. And the shocks have titanium springs for weight. Everything has gone through rebuilt, and the air conditioning is updated to a fantastic air conditioning system. So it has all the creature comforts and luxury, amazing sound system, amazing ice cold air conditioning, leather, sound deadening, everything you could possibly want. And there's nothing that is faster than this car. I mean, it is a rocket ship. I think Mike went in it. Maybe Mike drove it. I can't remember. But it's pretty sensational. I have yet to encounter another Porsche that's as fast. And I've driven just about all of them.
So I've got a question on this picture. This red stuff that looks like it's lava that flowed off the fan house. What is happening there?
You can't actually see from your photo what you're talking about.
It's the fan shroud.
Shroud.
Yeah, it looks like they poured it in and then they said, okay, that is good. That's fine. It's only for cooling.
He's gone through at this point, my car. So here's a great part of this story for anybody who, knows aftermarket stuff. I wait 9 months to take delivery of the car. I get the car. And after I get the car, it gets debuted at Luftgekühlt at Patrick Long's event in Los Angeles. And everybody goes bananas because the car was originally silver. And I said to him, green is my color for the team. And we picked emerald green metallic, the factory color that Porsche used in 74 or 75 to launch the 930. That was the launch color. And I said, that's the best color. And so they said, so we paint the car. And of course, Bruce wants to put a brown interior. I said, no, it's got to be green on green. And we even mixed some green paint into the black on the wheels. We debut it at Luftgekühlt. He goes out and sells 11 more copies on the heels of my car debuting at Luftgekühlt. After he does a couple more, he actually makes more modifications to the engine. They start doing custom rods and cams and different turbos and the titanium exhaust and different headers and, blah, blah, blah. So he calls me and he says, look, I want your car back. I need to make it exactly the same. Your car's sold so many additional cars that I'm going to just do your car and I'm going to take care of it. I said, okay, great. Well, how long is that going to take? He said, it'll take me 3 months. Well, it just clicked over 2 years that the car has been there. Every time I text him every once in a while, like, hey, how's that motor coming? And he's always like, oh yeah, we're just waiting for parts. So I don't know, somehow it'll get done someday. But like that muffler that you're looking at right now, what is on it now is the most insane looking thing. That's the Generation 1 muffler, and the Generation 2 muffler is like X crossed over and all titanium. I mean, they have just gone to insane lengths. And so the new iteration of the motor on E85 made almost 1,000 horsepower, and that's still 2.85 liters. So that's running, I think it's running 35 pounds of boost.
There's your dual Bilsteins.
Titanium springs.
Oh yeah, because steel. That much steel would definitely be too much weight. That is absolutely nuts. Okay, I'm gonna go back to that. Yeah, that made my evening. That was my dream car. But can we jump to the 904, which is pretty neat?
We can jump to the 904. The 904 has a great story. The 904 was owned by, and this is, everybody always wants the barn find. Well, this one was not in a barn. It was in a shipping container on this guy's property in Southern California. A really neat guy who actually was the president of his local chapter of PCA. His name was Les Gunnerson. He was from Orange County. This exact car he bought in 1968 when it was 4 years old. It had been lightly hill climbed in Italy and then made its way to California, and he bought it from the guy who brought it here. The guy who brought it here did a little bit of racing in California before Les bought it, and he restored the car, even though it was only 3.5, 4 years old. He restored it and painted it red and put this funky interior in it that sort of looks like an early 911 with the wooden dashboard. But he passed away last year, and meanwhile the car was in that green shipping container for about the last 22 years. Had not driven. He also had a really great 56 Speedster. He had a 1967 911R. He also had a 550 Spider, also in red. So just a really interesting guy. He was an engineer. He worked for one of the defense companies in Southern California, and he bought Porsches and loved Porsches. And there's a fantastic picture. I couldn't find it, or else I would have sent it to you. But there's a picture of this car at the premiere of Le Mans in 1970 in Los Angeles, because he knew Steve McQueen, and Steve assembled some really neat Porsches on Sunset Boulevard for the premiere of Le Mans. And this exact car was at that premiere. So I found out about the car, and I ended up purchasing it. I did a pre-purchase inspection with Rod Emery, good pal of mine. And Rod, this car sat in Gary Emery's showroom in Parts Obsolete for about 5 or 6 years at one point. And when Rod was 10 years old, he used to sit in this car and pretend to drive. So now the car is being restored by Rod Emery, which is a really neat thing for me because he's the best, and we've become very good friends over the past few years. We're very similar age, and he's just so passionate because he's known this car his whole life. One of the things that I also particularly liked about this was so many people who had 904s ditched the 4-cam 4-cylinder and put a 6 in it. The 904 was meant to have a 6-cylinder, and then Porsche couldn't get the 6 ready in time. So they made one last iteration of the 4-cam 4, which is the Type 587-3, 2-liter, approaching 200 horsepower, twin plug 4-cam. And this one is numbers matching engine and gearbox, and just so original and complete from a guy who really loved it and cared for it. We now have the engine out, and the engine is being fully restored by Ed Pink Racing Engines in Van Nuys, California. And the chassis is getting done by Rod Emery. And our goal with the chassis restoration is no paint. We're going to clean everything. We're going to fix things, but we're going to try as best we can to maintain all of the original paint. And we're going to take out the funky interior. I don't love the interior. It also reduces the headroom a little bit. But to find one where the tank isn't rusty, I mean, the gas heater is still in it. Just a very cool original car. And we want to preserve it, as opposed to the process we went through with the 914, where I said, look, it's already been restored once and not well, so let's just take it to bare metal and start over. This car was painted red and done in a restoration in 68, and otherwise has always been the red 904 in Costa Mesa, and that's how we're gonna restore it.
I think I think it's awesome. I love the 4-cylinder. I was looking at the size of the velocity stacks, and I guess this is a question for Mike. And you know, I used to know that you know, short stacks, high RPM, long stacks, more torque. Is that?
Yeah, that's pretty much true. Yeah, those are original Weber 46s on there. That was the hot setup in the day.
Yeah, that is.
Has actually been modified as was commonly done in those days. So the motor is completely stock, except it has a custom exhaust which looks like a Sebring style exhaust, but it was done so crudely. It's actually flat plate rolled into tubing to make a Sebring style exhaust with 1 7/8" diameter primary tubes, which are massive. And then the carburetors that are on it are actually 48 Webers, which was a pretty common upgrade for those cars. Because when you think about it, yes, it's a 4-cylinder, but it makes 2 liters with only 4 cylinders. So the cylinders are, you know, decent size compared to, let's say, a 2-liter 6-cylinder that ran on 46 carbs. So a lot of people changed them to 48s or even 50s.
That's a cool car. Where do you want to go next? Let's see. We're at 8:37. We could probably boy, we got lots of pictures, but I know there's probably a lot of questions that are coming in. So we have the 935, which is that short, and then we got the pink RSR, which we just got to go through.
It's magenta, Dyke.
Oh, whatever it is. All right, I'm going to hit the 935.
Pink car, no? Sorry, can you hear me okay, Dyke?
Yeah.
Okay, so 934 and a half, not 935.
Okay.
This was a original Interscope car delivered in 77 to the track at Sebring. So the first race it did, 12 Hours of Sebring, 1977, it ran all white so no livery because it got to the track so late. Hurley Haywood, Ted Field, Danny Ungaius drove it. Danny Ungaius put it on pole, but they had a problem, and I think the car either DNF'd or finished pretty far down, but went on to have a win at Brainerd with Danny Ungaius driving it in the same season in 77. And just has a cool history with a lot of good drivers. It was sold after 1 year to Jim Busby. Busby's team raced it for a season. And then the guy who restored it, who I bought it from Busby. And that is sort of the story. When I got it, we did another restoration because it had been raced and hadn't been done in a little while. And what you can't see from this picture, it still has the lollipop seat in this picture, but the car now has a modern, same exact seat as the current RSR from Porsche. So it's a 6-point fixed race tech seat that's non-adjustable and mounts both to the roll cage and to the floor. And in addition to that, the factory original roll cage, which was made of aluminum, we have removed and copied it in mild steel to make the car safer.
What's it like to drive?
4.5 seconds of turbo lag.
And then boom.
I have to say that it's incredibly fun to drive because the challenge in it is you're braking, and at the point in time, I mean, if you just drove it like you would a normal track car where you're braking and then you're trail braking and turning and then you're slowly feeding in the throttle, you're going to go from whatever position you're in to 3 places back. So you have to left foot brake it. And as you start to trail brake and turn in, with your left foot you're trailing and your right foot you're flat on the gas, and then you time it so that you hit full boost at the apex and hope that you get it right.
I like that. I know it's not pink. What color is it, Mike?
Magenta.
Magenta. Okay.
This one, yes, magenta 74 IROC color, one of the original IROC colors. The story with this car is Kevin Jeanette built it, and the idea was that we were going to build a hot rod, but it was everything that you could have had built by Porsche if you ordered an RSR for the street. So there's no modern stuff in this, no modern tricks, and it's an original factory color. It has a 3-liter mechanically fuel injected slide valve RSR motor, RSR 915 trans. Those are period correct Recaro seats and auto fluke seat belts. Yeah, it was just, everyone was doing at this point hot rods that were, down the Singer direction with modern fuel injection and engine management and ABS brakes and air conditioning and all these other creature comforts. And we just decided to go more old school and build the car with big flares and a lot of mechanical grip. And the engine just, with megaphones on it, the engine sounds, pretty amazing. Revs to 7,500 and sounds like it's revving at 10,000.
This one is outrageous. And there it is. Yeah, look at, you got too many plugs for a 6-cylinder. That's that old 12 plug distributor cap. That's wild. Yeah, that's very, very cool. I didn't know it was a slide valve. I think that's neat.
As it goes, I mean, a lot of people said you really don't want slide valve for the street. You want to have high butterfly. And after driving it for a number of years, I can say it really would be ideal if you were going to build one of these for the street that you'd make it high butterfly. The slide valve is it's just, it works, WFO. It doesn't work part throttle very well, not nearly as well as high butterfly, but it looks super cool. So that's all right.
I agree. That is one bad looking ride. My other car is a 991 GT3R. Yeah. All right.
That's a Kevin Jeanette license plate frame.
All right. That was fantastic. You are a trip. Did I cover all the cars? You probably got others that I don't know about, but I think we're about right on time. Hello, Shannon. Did we get any questions?
Waiting for us, Dyke, to debate. We're supposed to debate now.
Oh, no. I'm going to replay this. I've had an excellent evening. I can't go there.
All right, we're back. Thank you, Tim. This was a great night. Thank you, Mike and Dyke, for making it really interesting. In closing, I get to say that I actually have driven on the Bathurst track when I was in Australia years and years ago. And it is a crazy track, and I'm glad people jumped out to help you because, that was a really scary crash. So thanks for coming on tonight. Check out the website for our upcoming events, but want to give a shout out again. Thank you, Mike Dano from PowerTech, for putting me in touch with Tim. Thank you, Tim, and thank you, Dyke. Hope everyone has a good night. Great seeing you.
One other thing, since we were talking about Bridgehampton, one of our guests in a future Rebel Radio broadcast is Dennis Macchio, who was the track manager out of Bridgehampton when we were out there.
Wow, yeah.
And then he went to Bernal Roos and et cetera. And he's going to be fun. Tim, we miss you here a lot. You scared the shit out of us last year. Don't do that again. And thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.